Thank you, Chair. My name is Sang-Jin Lee, Standing Commissioner for the Korea Trade Commission, and I'm very glad to have making a comment on the Professor Owen's presentation. From that presentation, I look at the histories of the global trade and in particular statistics regarding the elasticity of the free world trade with respect to GDP. And also, I saw some sign of hope. The United States public shows endorsed, international trade, which is against our perception regarding the U.S. public after the election, presidential election. So my comment actually centers on three slides. The first one is which trade and GDP growth stylized effect. This one is, as he mentioned, and then previously, usually, the world trade volume growth is higher than the world GDP growth, which is shown in the blue line, and then the world growth, GDP growth is a red line. You will see that there is a cross correlation, but the elasticity is higher than the world GDP growth. But currently, very recently, it has been narrowed down. Whether this is the sign of those two relationships is no longer relevant, or decoupling, or which one is the independent variable, and which one is the dependent variable. And then my second argument is, let's see here, this one first. And then this is the elephant chart, so-called relative gain in real per capita income by global income level. You will see that at the 80% of the distribution, which means the U.S. general public, the factory workers at the Rust Belt, and they the most hardly hit people by the world trade liberalization. So, as President-elect Donald Trump mentioned, that maybe a free trade agreement, NAFTA, and Korea-U.S. free trade agreement is the major culprit killing jobs in the United States. And so I try to argue about this one, whether this is really, founded claims or there is any other reason for that. And the third one is, you see here, there is a global overcapacity regarding the conventional industries and products. So it persists over the longer time. So for these three factors combined, I try to explain my argument. And okay, regarding this stylized effect, you see, very recently, Janet Yellen, who is the Federal Reserve chair, she made a speech at the Boston Federal Reserve meeting. And then she is emphasizing the hysteresis, which means, the terminology means lagging behind. What means is the lingering effect of the recession persists. Recession affect the total aggregate demand. She says if aggregate demand is very slow and on a downturn, over the long run, it will impact the aggregate supply as well. So she mentioned that instead of the spurring the aggregate supply, she said maybe a high pressure economy may be better, and to stimulate the total demand or aggregate demand in the United States. And my argument is that when we have a high worldwide GDP growth, then as Dr. Owen mentioned, that the elasticity is higher, what it means is that domestic demand from U.S. and other countries actually bringing more, international trade. But in case of the downturn, a recession, then it means that this world trade may be much aggravated than we expected because the elasticity is higher than 1. So that's my argument. So I think for me, it seems to, world trade is kind of dependent variable rather than the leading factor of the GDP growth. So we need to analyze or examine the causal relationships between the GDP growth and the world trade. My argument is that probably world trade might be the dependent variable rather than the independent variable. So it always follows the domestic issues. And then secondly, this elephant chart, polarization, that regarding this, I think that WTO and IMF and the World Bank mentioned that 80% of unemployment in advanced economies was the result of technology advancement and innovation, as well as the absence of timely restructuring. And then, as I mentioned earlier, that probably potential aggregate supply has been lowered because of the hysteresis effect. So my argument is that if the world leaders or world economists is taking the protectionism stance, then it'll hardly, it'll reduce to it'll trigger the lowering of the domestic demand, and then the impact will, over the long run, will impact the aggregate supply as well. And then also, according to the economist, the richest consumers would lose 28% of purchasing power compared with those in the bottom 10th would lose 63% if we are taking the protectionism stance regarding the international trade. So here at the brochure, you will see that Professor Irwin's book, one of the books, Peddling Protectionism, Smooth Folly and the Great Depression, which history has witnessed this kind of phenomenon. In 1929, when the Great Depression in the United States occurs, actually, Smooth-Foley Act has been enacted, and then 59% duty rate hike for over the 20,000 items actually brought the Great Depression. And then the other countries also take the countervailing duty imposing and dumping, anti-dumping, levies or duties. So my argument is that this, if we take the, if we take the protectionism stance, given this kind of sluggish aggregate demand, then the most hardly hit part will be the bottom 8%, 80%, because of the losing their purchasing power. And then, thirdly, here there is a lack of the supply, lack of the, there is a overcapacity issues. My argument is that we need to find out some way of new space for to facilitate world trade. And then one of the issues for this is, I think that probably the best one is the, e-commerce, because the cross-border e-commerce lowers the transaction cost and then entry barriers among countries. So you see, currently, I mean, I saw a surge of the cross-border transaction between China and Korea in terms of online transaction. And because it, overseas direct purchase is much easier. So many of the customers get used to this kind of transaction. But the problem is how do we settle the payment and how do we settle the customs for online transaction, and then how do we handling the consumer's aggregates after transaction has been made of the online. So against this backdrop, Korea, China, Japan has endorsed digital single market initiatives in year 2014. So we try to eliminate some.
Can you wrap it up, please?
Okay. And then my second argument is that because there is a huge service sector is also available, and then also SMEs can have more room for international trade space. Because for OECD member countries, 95% of the output production has been done by SMEs, but they are only taking 35% of the global trade. So there is a huge room for further growth. And then if they are relying on the e-commerce, that's much easier. And then lastly, there are regional or multilateral free trade agreement might be better for them to having easier transaction of service like TISA, and SME might take advantage of this kind of framework. So my conclusion is that we need to be more careful about taking the protectionism stance, because there is a certain confusion about the causal effect. And then so my argument is that
please wrap it up. Time is up.
Okay. Thank you.